that we may indeed have to start transplanting some of those things. But there's also just this real hesitancy to start moving plants and animals to places where they've never been before. You know, people start remembering what happened when we took bunnies to Australia and starlings to North America. And so there's been this discussion and this realization that it may become necessary. But in terms of you know, looking at management policies and that kind of stuff, as far as I know, it hasn't reached that stage yet. So,
back to the ozone, I noticed there was a spike about 2 weeks ago corresponding to spring break in your ozone levels. Do you get local episodes? Is it always flat, like you say?
It's almost invariably. Basically, you know, we have so much congestion in Grand Canyon Village that it's real easy to guess that, you know, oh wow, yeah, no wonder they have ozone here. But looking at the actual amount of pollutants that are put into the air, it shrinks to, I like to draw the conclusion, we did an emission inventory several years ago, well, for the year 2000. And to do that inventory of air pollution in Grand Canyon National Park, one of the things we had to do was estimate how many miles were driven in the park. You know, how many miles the tourists drive, how many miles we drive, how many miles, you know, the businesses drive. And so we estimated that the total mileage driven by everybody at Grand Canyon National Park over the course of the year 2000 was 44 million miles. 44 million miles driven within Grand Canyon National Park in the year 2000. Then I did a little bit of checking the census data, and I discovered that Maricopa County drives that far on an average day by the end of the lunch break. So all those miles that we drive in Grand Canyon over the course of a year, they're knocking off by the end of lunch down in Phoenix. So it's a case of undoubtedly some of our air pollution that's released by all those people trying to find a parking place in Grand Canyon Village, some of that's going to turn into ozone. But for the most part, it's not a major contributor, and the ozone formation actually happens downwind because it takes time for the sun to cook those things together. Even in Phoenix, the highest ozone levels measured in Phoenix are actually measured outside the east side of town in the Manzanar Mountains. After those pollutants have had a chance to cook as they're headed out into the wilds. Yes?
So is it only the upper layer, or does it reach the river level?
It reaches to the river level, but we don't know how much. One thing that we don't know is how rim to river. We know that the air mixes because of other pollutants that we measure, but we also know that the pollutant levels at the rim are different from what they are in the river. Actually, usually the air pollution is worse inside of the canyon than it is up on the rim. And so people put on those heavy backpacks to escape to nature, and they're actually hiking even more polluted air. But we've never done ozone monitoring down inside of the canyon, so we don't know if ozone follows that rule or not. We have done monitoring east and west across the park, and we have found that at the western end of the park, ozone levels rise and fall in sync with Las Vegas, which is kind of a, well, duh. In the middle of the park, we find that they rise and fall, but it seems to be associated, and this is in the Toro Leaf area, they rise and they fall, but it seems to be associated with wind patterns, with the daytime up canyon wind bringing in pollution from Vegas, and then the nighttime downslope wind bringing in clean air off the Arizona Strip. But then when we try and extend that pattern to what we see in Grand Canyon Village, it falls apart. And what we think is happening is by the time we get so far east to Grand Canyon Village, we not only have the Vegas plume, but we have the LA plume, and we have the Phoenix plume, and they're kind of swirling together there, and we haven't figured out how the swirling works. Yeah.
Carl, I was going to say, just take one more question so we can let Vahe go home if you don't mind.
Okay. One more. There's one back there.
How much contamination does control burns add to the mix?
It depends on the burn. If everything goes well, all the smoke goes into Utah, and it's not our problem anymore. And if everything goes badly, all the smoke goes into the Grand Canyon, and you can't see one side from the other. So it is one of those things that, you know, it is, we try to predict. Before we do any burning, the fire managers, one of the things that they do is they come to me with their burn plan. And then I take their burn plan and I plug it into my computer and I run the little smoke models that tell me how much smoke the fire's going to make and where we think the smoke's going to go. And we don't light the fire unless the computer tells us that the smoke isn't going to be a problem. And so, so that would mean then that the smoke would never be a problem if the computer never lied. But unfortunately, the computer lies, or the weather changes, or something like that. So we have had episodes actually where we've had to post health warnings over on the North Rim because the particulate levels had exceeded, not by a whole lot, but they had exceeded the levels that EPA has set to protect human health. And that's happened, I think, on 4 different days over the last several years that I can think of. So it has happened, but most of the time we've been fortunate enough that we can still get some yucky views, but it's very, very rare for us to violate those health standards, and it is something that we do our best to avoid.